you got 1 year. Change your last name. Why isn't it changed yet? So
I'm joking.
Kind of. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of changing your last name after you become married. So what's up, Flourishing fam? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I love teaching women and couples how to flourish in the areas of career and marriage balance. So if that sounds good, welcome to Flourish with Delores. I teach you how to embrace your journey. Remember that flourishing is about progress and not perfection, honey. So let's get right into this video. Charles and I are going to be married for 1 year on June 25th. We're recording this on June 4th. And as of now, I still have my maiden name. He still has his maiden name. Dude, I
don't know if it's called maiden name.
He still has his Mr. name, and I'm the maiden.
Okay. The name I was born with? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So I have not changed my name yet. It's funny, just to give you guys a little bit of a background. When I was younger, so my last name is Sarfo Darko. I'm from Ghana, so my heritage is Ghanaian. And when I was young, because my last name is so long, it's 10 letters plus a hyphen. So it would just be so annoying to have to spell it out and then hear people, oh, Sarfo Darko is like the Darko. So no, people would be like, is it like Donnie Darko? Like,
who's Donnie Darko?
I don't know. I always hear that joke and I've yet to look it up because I don't
Should I look it
care. Let's see who's Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
I'll be 30 years old where I find out why people always be like, oh, isn't it like Donnie Darko? It's usually older people. So I think it's like an old school show. Is it an old school show?
It's a science fiction psychological thriller film written.
Oh, 2001. That's not that old.
Yeah.
Was that a remake? Because I feel like I've...
Let's see. Oh, yeah, it wasn't really...
Let's see, 1988. So I think it's like an old...
Yeah, maybe the setting is old, but... Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. I don't know. So I used to be like, man, I can't wait to change my last name to like a Smith or a Jones. Like, I'm gonna make sure I marry somebody with something simple where I just say it and you know how to spell it, you know how to say it, you just good.
People know how to spell my last name.
I know, so that's the point. So guess what, y'all? I married someone whose last name is Farmer. Like, when you hear Farmer, you know how to spell it, you know how to say it. However, for me, by the point in which we got married, which we actually got married a year earlier. We're supposed to get married this June, but whatever. You know, the panoramic. But for us, when Charles proposed to me, I was 27, 28. Either way, I had already had my doctorate. So I had my bachelor's, my master's, my doctorate. I was already creating a name for myself in higher ed. I had already published some research. I already, presented at a national conference as Delores Sarfo Darko. So when he proposed to me and proposed the idea of like, oh cool, so when are you gonna change your last name? I was like, excuse me, I'm Delores Sarfo Darko. So we come here today to have this conversation of what are the pros and cons of changing last names, and is it still a thing? Like, do we still care if people change their last name? So we'd love for you to have this conversation with us. Definitely comment below your thoughts. It's a no judgment zone. Either way, I feel like it's always gonna be preference. But I'm still trying to figure out if I'm gonna do this, y'all. So let's start with the first pro should we do pros or cons first?
Pros.
Okay. You wanna just end on a negative note? Well, cons are always negative, but yeah. So pros is that you get to have the same last name as your future children if you guys decide to have children. So if we decide to have children, I would have the same last name as my children. That is a pro. Can I rebut the pro in this moment? Well,
I guess we can. Do you want to just go through all the pros first? Maybe we'll go through all the pros first. Because one thing I was going to add on that, I think that, and not to say that there aren't, parents that have different last names. I don't think it's a big deal, but like, I think that when, the kids end up going to like school and like we have like conversations with like the administration and the teachers and stuff like that, I think it does make it at least maybe a little less confusing if like, the parents do end up having like the same last name, because otherwise it's like pretty clear that okay, you guys are like together and you're so and so's parents, as opposed to if it's like with different last names, like, oh, are you guys together, you're not together?
Yeah. And one of the things that we've talked about and also heard some of our friends say is that unfortunately, especially for us as an African American couple, sometimes there's just this stigma of I don't know why, because there's so many examples, but there's just this stigma that you know, women aren't necessarily married to the father of their children.
Right.
And so when we think of why it's important to change the last name and have the same last name as your children, sometimes that's a thought that people have. Another thought that someone told me, which I never thought about it this way, but she's in an interracial relationship. Her fiance is white. Shout out to y'all if you're watching. I know you guys are, but I just don't want to put you guys out there like that. But her fiance is white, and she was like, I don't want to be in the airport one day trying to get my kids through on a flight, and people are like, well, how do we know this is your kid? They're, you know, these are white kids and you're black. So, you know, that's like another thing, just having like that cohesive, like same child, same mom situation. But, you know, on the other hand, I also feel like it's 2000 and whatever 21. It is, 21, thank you. I'm still stuck in 2020. And I just feel like if someone thinks that I'm not married to the father of my child, I don't care. Like, mind your business. I know that I am. And also, there's just so many complex families now. Right. There's so many blended families. There's so, like, I just feel like we're just so far in the thought of you have to be married to the father of your child. Of course, that ties into our religious beliefs, but things happen, you know, and, you know, people adopt. Like, there's just so many different situations, and I just think it's not a huge deal. And for me, when we send our kids to school, I don't know the legalities of it, but I plan to just write Delores Farmer. Like, for me, I don't mind just being Delores Farmer, like, socially. So I feel like when I pick up my kids and they're like, hi, Mrs. Farmer, I'd be like, hi, but it's Mrs. Dr. Farmer, but that's okay. How you doing, children? You know, so I would never be like, it's Sarfo Darko. You know, like, I don't foresee that. So I feel like my children's teachers, community can still see me as Dr. Mrs. Charles Farmer.
There we go.
So, you know, that's just kind of like our thoughts, you know, when we kind of think about that, like the different things that we're thinking. So for me, I feel like, yes, it would be nice to have the same last name as our children, but at the same time, who cares? It's 2021, you know? Mm-hmm. The other pro is you just move as one household. And I guess we kind of touched on that when we talked about the theory of like what happens when you're in the airport or just trying to pick your children up and just that confusion. I guess another example I could think of is when we go to the doctors, we have the same family doctor, and then they, you know, that confusion of like, oh, it's the same last name, and then you have to like explain like, no, this is mine. So there is that.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Or invitations too. I think like when you know, people either send you stuff in the mail. I guess it depends upon how you like set it up with like your friends and family and stuff like that. Because otherwise, like, it's like, do you send it as Mr. and Mrs. So and so, or do you know that they both have different last names and they prefer to be addressed separately? So I think.
Yeah.
I think it warrants discussion, I guess. I
will say I had a friend that was gonna send us something, and she was like, how do I address you? Did you change your last name?
Right.
But for me, again, maybe because it's funny, I overthink almost every aspect of my life. I feel like the last name thing, I don't overthink too much. I feel like we're married. If you want to send us a card that says the Farmers, I would never be offended, because I do truly see myself as a farmer. I just haven't legally changed it, you know? So, yeah. So let's get to the cons. And don't forget, we want to have this conversation with you, so definitely drop your thoughts in the comments below. But a big con for me is, child, I'm busy, and that is a lot of work. A lot. And you know what, honestly, I haven't even really looked into the work, but just the amount of things, when you start to think of all the things that has your name on it.
I looked into it.
I'm like, who got time for that?
It was a lot, I'm not gonna lie.
It's a lot. Like, you need to change your license, you need to change your social security card, you need to change your passport. Those are the three things that just at minimum has to be changed. But those are three things that aren't the easiest things to change.
Especially
because those are, exactly, especially not now with everything that's going on. Yeah. So those are just very complicated things to change. And who likes going to the DMV just to renew their license? Now I gotta go.
No one likes going anyway.
Exactly. Now I have to go to just change my name. Yeah. So that's just one of the biggest cons to me. It just seems like a pain in, you know, it just seems like a pain. So that's a huge thing. And then also, once you get beyond the huge legal documents, then also I wasn't born here. So then I started to think, so what does that mean for like my citizenship stuff? Like, do I need to change that certificate? Yeah, like that literally just popped in my mind. But like my citizenship stuff and having a different name from that. And you know, well, I mean, we're not under the same leadership as we were before, but there was like that whole thing with our former leadership. So, and then your bills, your doctor's your doctor's office, your like little things as even like your Netflix account, like just every single account going in to change. And then what about my email address? You know, my personal email address, which has my first name dot last name. So it just seems like a lot of work. And also, speaking of a lot of work, how come guys don't even, like, you see how I'm getting all flustered and he's relaxed as he's like, dang, that sounds like a lot for you.
I will say though that, and I think we're gonna touch on this other point about like, you know, when you have made a certain accomplishment, like especially when education, and you have like a diploma with your name on it, that's something that you cherish, right? And you know, I encountered that a lot more, especially in medical school, for a lot of people that you know, got married, that they either kept their names or they either created like some sort of like hybrid where like included both of their names, or they just made a completely different name altogether. Yeah, so I see, especially, you know, when you get into like people like getting like, you know, degrees and doctors and stuff like that, that they are more inclined to keep a name that, like, you know, either their own name or to make some type of
make
change
something up.
Yeah.
Like I know, I think I mean, I don't know the person personally, but someone told me they know someone who the husband and wife just went ahead and changed their last name to Love. I would love that. I would love to be Dr. and Mrs. Delores Love. You want to do that?
I think this is catchy.
You want to change our last names? That way we just have the same last name, and then that solves everything.
But then
you go through the name change, I go through the name change.
Then what about my diploma?
Exactly. But you didn't care about mine. But you didn't care about mine. And that's one thing I love. I love when my students can go into my office. Like, there's been offices I've gone into and I look at their diplomas because I just love seeing where they went, what they got. And then I'm like, oh, Johnson? But Mrs. Farmer, I thought your last name was Farmer. Why does that say Johnson? Like, it's just confusing.
Don't worry about it.
So then I just feel like I just, you know, then things just don't match. But I wouldn't want us to both change and create something new personally, because I do feel like there's a lot of meaning in your last name and how it connects to your family, and my last name and how it connects to my family. So I think sometimes the best thing maybe is to just combine. Like, I feel like maybe if my last name was like Jones, we could be Jones Farmer. Yeah. You know, kind of combine it like that. But Sarvadarko Farmer, it's pretty long.
Drop a comment below if you think that works, because
But would you make your last name Sarvadarko so we both become Sarvadarko Farmer? Like, that's the thing. Because technically, I feel like technically when your name is hyphen, do you really have the same last name? No. Your children's last name is Farmer, and your last name is Jones Farmer.
Right, but it's like it's there in the end, so people kind of, you know, they kind of get it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious if anyone knows anyone that has like a hyphenated, but then also added another name next to it. I have actually looked it up, and there are some couples that have actually tried it, and it just kind of made it work. But like they made like their original last name was hyphenated, and they added on their spouse's name to it.
I did not mean to make that.
Yes, you did. You said what you said.
If you do, charge it to my head and not my heart. I still love you.
Yes, because I looked it up one day. There are couples online that have done that. It's a long name, I'm not gonna lie to you, but they made it work.
I'm just trying to imagine like Sarvadarko Farmer, and it's just so funny because it goes back to my childhood self that was like, I can't wait to have a more simple last name, and now you're trying to complicate it by giving me 3 hyphens. So I don't know about that.
Yes.
So that brings us to the second con, which is I feel like it takes away from my identity. So we pretty much already talked about this, but all of my life I've been this person. I've gotten accolades as this person. I've not even the accolades, but just you are that person. People know you as this certain name. And it's funny, my Derek and I, my little brother, were talking about our sister-in-law Angel. Shout out to Angel. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't even remember Angel's last name, because I do think maybe after a while, like let's say I change my last name to Farmer tomorrow, 20 years from now, some people, especially people that we meet along the way, may not even really realize I was Delores Sarvadarko Fine. So the whole identity thing, after a while, you grow into that new identity. But for me, my last name is also rooted in my culture. So I think, I don't know, I'm just saying, I think if my last name was Jones, that wasn't, well, I don't know if Jones is really, is Jones like a black culture name? No, I feel like that's like anybody. But like if my last name was like Williams, like I'm just trying to think of a last name that's not necessarily connected to an ethnicity. Smith. Everybody's a Smith. Yeah. So my last name was Smith. I feel like I wouldn't feel that tug as much. But because my last name is rooted in my Ghanaian heritage, there's so many people who maybe see me and they don't realize or recognize that I'm Ghanaian, but when they see my name, they're like, oh, you from Ghana? Oh, Ghana, hey. Like, we just have that whole connection, especially for me working in higher ed and having students who are Ghanaian or from another country in Africa. They recognize the last name and they feel a bond with me. And I feel like giving up my last name literally feels like I'm like giving up a part of me, a part of my heritage, a part of my culture. And because my kids won't carry that, people won't see my kids, our kids, and see like, oh, they must be Ghanaian, like they're not farmer, like, you know, like your last name also isn't connected to a ethnicity or a heritage. So not a heritage, yeah. Right. So
but the argument also is that you know, just play devil's advocate, is that like, you know, from your middle name you could be able to tell. And then it's not like a name in and of itself removes you from that culture. Like, you're still gonna do things in your life that represent, you know, your culture and your country, and you're going to put those elements, you know, and how you conduct yourself, you know, in life, and how you raise children. So it's not like just because, and I definitely respect the importance of like the name and like, you know, having connection to your culture, but it's not like if you remove the name altogether that you're not going to have no connection whatsoever.
It's true. Yeah. It's true, but I do feel like there are two things that like we're automatically judged from before we open our mouth: how we look. So, you know, as Black people, like our skin color, people automatically see like, oh, you're Black. And then when you open your mouth and say your name, then we make deductions from your name. So like if your name is Damalola, oh, are you Nigerian? Like, you just kind of make that.
I kind of know a Damalola.
Yeah, you just kind of make that connection. I was just trying to find a name that was like rooted in a heritage, in a culture, heritage, whatever, ethnicity. So, you know, I just feel like, yes, like eventually as you get to know me, like you're gonna know I'm Ghanaian, because I'm gonna tell you I'm Ghanaian, and I'm gonna tell you I'm, you know, raised in Connecticut and just happen to be living in Jersey. Like, you're gonna find all that stuff out. But I just feel like, you know, from the gate, I feel like I'm kind of ripping that out. And to, you know, if I'm being honest, that does make me sad. And yeah, that makes me sad. So do I have to change it?
No, baby. I would never make you change anything or do anything that, like, you know, is uncomfortable. But I think this just goes on to highlight the importance of, you know, within a marriage, like having discussion and understanding that you're not always going to see eye to eye on everything. And it's important to listen and to hear, you know, where your partner, you know, is coming from. And, you know, I think that just goes to show that marriage involves, like, you know, compromises. So.
Yeah, for sure. The other con, which I think we already said, the last one, is I feel like it feels old school. But we already talked about that and how like it's 2021, like, you know. But I do agree with what you're saying with like in marriage there's so many compromises you make, and I know it is something that's important to you that makes it feel like, you know, the deal's sealed, like we are one family. So I think in making my decision, I also now as a married woman have to take into consideration what that means to you and how important it is in the totem pole of all the other things that we're trying to do. So yeah.
Well, we're not gonna lose sleep over it though.
You sure you're not gonna lose sleep over it?
No. You know I go right to sleep. So I think, you know, looking at the pros and cons, for, you know, maybe there are some people that are watching that are also you know, considering this. I think it comes up with a lot of couples that are considering marriage. You know, there's obviously a lot of different ways to go about it. I don't think there's any right or wrong way. I think you just have to figure out what works best for you and your partner.
Yes. And I will say, you know, Charles has been saying to me, I'm going to call him out, like, you got 1 year. Change your last name. Why hasn't it changed yet? So.
I'm joking.
Kind of. But he don't want y'all coming after him in the comments. But thank you so much for watching this. Definitely comment below your thoughts. Again, like Charles said, everybody has a different preference. And, you know, at the end of the day, do you, boo. And, yeah, thanks for watching. And make sure you subscribe and hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this. Peace.